Hey everyone, happy Friday. Hashtag Malkin Live. I just rushed over actually from Facebook Live to let everyone know there that they should follow me for these streams. For some weirdo reason, I get tons of messages from people just a few minutes into starting the Facebook live streams that the broadcast is interrupted. I don't know if there's just some built-in algorithms after 7 minutes. They're like, okay, that's enough of you, right? Uh, anyway, for whatever reason, I don't seem to have that problem here on Periscope and the YouTube Live when I do these things, right? Which I've been doing fairly regularly for the last 8 or 9 weeks. Hope you've enjoyed them. All of the interesting interviews that I've done with very compelling people across the country, people you don't usually see on cable TV, people I'm not supposed to talk to, people you're not supposed to listen from. And it was really interesting. I don't know if you all caught the Joel Gilbert follow-up interview yesterday that I did, where he mentioned 3 times being booked on Fox News and 3 times getting canceled. Just mysteriously, there's always some reason, always some pretext that this talented investigative journalist and documentarian who has unearthed one of the biggest hoaxes in American criminal justice can't get, 1 second of airtime on Fox News. It's just bizarre. So I've loved doing Malkin Live. And as I announced on Facebook and has already been announced on Twitter, I am undertaking a new endeavor on Newsmax starting tomorrow, a half-hour show, and it will be 7 p.m. Eastern on Newsmax. So check your TV listings. You go to the newsmax.com site, find out what your channel listing is there, or you can watch it on Newsmax TV's YouTube page. So the name of the show, which is already out there, is Sovereign Nation, which is what we used to be. We're living in the reign of the mob right now, of course, and we're all subjugated under this horrible, horrible anarcho-tyranny. But I'll be talking about all of the issues that have fueled my writing career and my books for the last 30 years. Hope you like it, and we'll see how that goes. It's always a much more liberating environment, more freewheeling, right here on the live stream. You don't have the constraints of these short segments, but still a half an hour is a gift, really, if you think about it. In cable TV time, a monologue or an interview that can last 6, 7, or 8 minutes is like an eternity in our attention deficit disorder racked culture. So let's see. Just like with the Facebook stream that I did, I'm going to make this more casual. There's a couple of pieces that I wanted to mention and read through. I saw a funny comment on, I think it was my Malkin Live interview yesterday, of someone moaning. I'm sorry, pardon my French here. If you got kids, just turn down the volume a little bit. But some guy bitching that my Malkin live streams were too long. Oh, 55 minutes, he said. I don't have 55 minutes. Well, like the hashtag says, walk away. Walk away. Seriously? Right? Who's forcing you to sit here and listen to me, right? I haven't dragooned a single person, right? It's the miracle of the free market. If you don't like it, go away. Hit the pause button, turn off the computer, go for a hike. I don't care. 55 minutes is too long. 2 minutes is too long. This is a result of this terrible toxic conditioning. Cable news has been a blessing and a bane, hasn't it? Oh God, it's too much for my brain for you to be talking for 55 minutes with somebody about some important topic. That's just too much for me. The interviews that I've done over the years on, all different types of formats, I've always said this. And I know some of you will have an issue with it because you think that this channel is biased. But the best interviews, like when I die and you're like, oh, I miss Michelle Malkin, and where can I find, some interviews of her to watch? And the YouTube ones lately have been really good, but I don't know how long they're going to stay up there, right? I guess you can go on BitChute and find all of the backed up ones. Thank you, BitChute. BitChute, by the way, whose links are now being discriminated against on YouTube, on Twitter, pardon me. Screw Twitter, right? Just go straight to BitChute for your favorite content. Anyway, sort of setting aside the social media work that I've done, my favorite interviews have always been on C-SPAN. On C-SPAN, the first long form interview I ever did was with the invaluable Brian Lamb when I came out with Invasion in 2002. And you can watch that. Oh my gosh. I actually have to cringe when I watch myself on early TV, but it's also very humbling. And I think it's good. I think it's great that you can go back 18 years and see how, one of these types of people on TV develops. I was terrible. I still don't think I'm all that great on TV. I mean, naturally, my predisposition is as a writer. I am an ink-stained wretch. That's what they used to call us in the newspaper business. I literally had ink on my hands from handling the newspaper, right? So to do like a long-form interview it was almost painful. I was terrified. But over the years, C-SPAN had me back to talk about every single book that I ever published, and to talk really about the arc of my career in both newspaper journalism and as a book author. So, and those were, I think one of them went on for like 2 hours or something like that, when Book TV was still like a separate franchise or enterprise at C-SPAN. People always say, oh, well, C-SPAN was liberal. No, they're not. I mean, remember that these were the sort of the original citizen journalism in a sense, because their whole idea was, we need to have cameras in the chambers so that the people who elected all of the Congress critters could see what they were actually doing. There was no commentary. There was no editing. It was just turn on the camera and watch them do their business, which is supposed to be our business, right? So then, the whole cable news cycle came along, and people's attention spans shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. And we've really paid a stiff price for that in terms of our inability to communicate serious ideas and the inability of audiences to comprehend, to fathom something more than stupid, empty junk food talking points. So I know I didn't mean to get all black-pilled right away. It's so awesome to see so many people here in comments. Hi, everybody. Look, and I know that it's kind of a pain in the ass because I don't have moderators. I don't have all the time to invest in doing all this stuff and getting all the trolls out of there. So you know what? It's a free-for-all. It's a Wild West. Everyone can just put on their, big boy pants and big boy skirts and deal with all of that there in the comments or whatnot. I will try and again, like I don't have a producer here for this show and I don't have any monitors or whatever. But if I see questions and comments from all of you, I'll try and read those as well. I did want to get to a couple of things and a couple of lighthearted things as well as some serious things. The first thing that I wanted to talk about, see if I can share this on my screen, is my column this week. And I know I've got some Colorado folks in the audience, so they'll know what I'm talking about here. There was a siege not too far from where I live in a residential neighborhood, nice working class neighborhood called Pulpit Rock. And right there on Pulpit Rock Drive, an entire mob of the usual suspects, the same types, and I believe some of the same exact individuals who were up on stage, who had overtaken our Back the Blue rally in Denver a couple of weeks ago. That made national, even international news. I had live streamed the whole thing as they attacked people up on stage, bloodied them while the police watched. Now, let me just make sure that you are seeing this. Let's see if I can do this single screen, make it bigger. Yeah, there we go. You don't need to see my face for a couple of seconds, right? And this was one of the scenes which I just wanted to show you. This did not make national news, although I think this is as significant or more significant than what happened at the Back the Blue rally. So this was the scene. Let me play it.
If he pulls that weapon up, he will be shot. If that weapon comes up, he will be shot. No, fucking he will.
Okay, just like how you do to us, right?
What?
Just like how you do to us, right? Us every single day, man. If you pull this weapon, you can pull yours too. You got the same self-defense. If I had a weapon on me, would you pull yours out? If you point out.
So, I'm gonna see if I can. Yeah. So many of these agitators, BLM and Antifa types who had marched into the neighborhood to target a Colorado Springs police officer who had been cleared by a grand jury last year in a police-involved fatal shooting of a suspected armed robber, had his home doxxed and then besieged by this entire crowd. Now, I have this frozen on this particular scene because I believe that this woman right here with the braid and the black hat and the mask is the same woman who stood behind me, who took out the collapsible baton just inches from me on stage in Denver at the Civic Center Plaza at the Back the Blue rally. And she was armed. I believe she was carrying an AR-15. These people were openly breaking Colorado state laws as well as city ordinances regarding targeted picketing, obstructing traffic. You can see that man there in the yellow scarf who had this some sort of security vest and all, was menacing the motorist who was trying to get to his home. And I discovered after interviewing the public information officer of the Colorado Springs Police Department that there were, in fact, many officers on scene who simply sat and watched. They monitored the situation, as it were. And see if I can exit this StreamYard thing. And so essentially, in effect, this was exactly like the retreat order, the stand down order that was imposed on the rank and file cops in Denver, which of course I discovered after the Denver Police Union president, God bless him, Nick Rogers, came forward publicly to apologize on behalf of rank and file officers for what happened there. So, you know, apology or not, the point here is that it continues to happen. And it happened again last night in Portland. I'm not going to bring it up because you can just look on any feed on this. Wait a minute. Looks like okay. Yeah, we still got comments. So Portland, once again, right? We had this Antifa hearing. Everybody said we can't let this happen. And then, you know, the federal agents were withdrawn. And Bill Barr and the Justice Department are not pressing any Antifa-related domestic terrorism charges against any of those people who've been partying every night and tearing down the city of Portland. Disgraceful videos of elderly people. I am going to play that one just because, just for posterity's sake, people need to see, this has been happening despite all of the hue and cry and sound and fury from all of these politicians saying never again, this is not going to happen. We're going to stand and fight and blah, 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 blah. Let's see, where is that poor woman in front of the courthouse? Well, here's one. This was on Andy Knows site, sharing video from others who were on scene. Turn up the sound here.
God damn! You understand that? Yesterday! God You understand that?
That's our country. I want to know if this is happening where you are now. I think that Andy Knows warning at that hearing was, I can't say it's prescient, right? Prescient is a forecast of the future. This is the present. It's happening now. The failure to stop what's going on in Portland is incentivizing everyone else in the Antifa and Black Lives Matter movements to push into the suburbs, to move from the coastal bubbles into flyover country. And that leads me into my more in-depth discussion of a point that I had made at the beginning of my column, which led to the Anti-Defamation League defaming me, right? Again, because they just can't get enough of the little brown woman with the big mouth. Okay, so in the opening of my column, I had mentioned that in June, many media outlets, national media outlets, the New York Times, NBC News, CNN, the Associated Press, there were so many others, all converged to try and persuade readers and viewers that neither Antifa nor Black Lives Matter militants were fanning out, right, from their little sanctuary spaces and invading the suburbs and white communities, right? They said it was misinformation, bad information, unfounded rumors. Of course, they invoked the conspiracy card. We're just spreading false conspiracies, baseless theories. The Associated Press blamed, right, conservative news outlets and pro-Trump social media accounts. And then, of course, there was the Anti-Defamation League. And they amassed all of the other echo chamber tools and wrote their own big condemnation of what they called disinformation. Here, let's bring that up. Disinformation. I'm just going to read you the headline. Yeah. Disinformation. Antifa planning violent attacks on white suburbs. And it goes on to just poo-poo and dismiss all of this. And of course, we're the real menaces who were warning that exactly what's happened was going to happen. Do they ever apologize? Do they ever retract? No. Is it totally pointless to demand that they do? Yes. This is what they do. The ADL lies. And so I had put in my column that ADL really stands for all damned lies. All damned lies. So, right on cue, here is the ADL. Dun, 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 dun. Hoo, 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 hoo. Hey, at least they picked a nice picture of me, Right? I'm not going to complain about that. Usually those media matter monkeys will sit there all day long with their hand on the play pause button to try and get, the ugliest picture of me with my mouth wide open and my eyes all scrunched or whatever. The ADL didn't even bother, right? So this is the ADL from, when was this? Yesterday? No, 2 days ago. Michelle Malkin has proven herself to be an unrepentant bigot, repeatedly embracing anti-Semitic and anti-immigrant rhetoric and sharing conspiracies rooted in hate. It's funny. It's like they're like making me out like I'm some Goebbels-like figure, and then here's this goofy picture of me all dolled up from Fox News, sharing conspiracies rooted in hate. Look at my smiling face. It's just, they're just too much. Okay, so then they link to some piece which is headlined, Michelle Malkin is attempting to normalize white supremacy. It's just like, nobody thought to themselves, this is a weird juxtaposition. It's just funny. Like, you have to laugh at it. Now, here's the thing, right? You get all of these Con Inc. types. Okay, and if you're new to my live stream, if you're coming over from Facebook and you haven't been paying attention the last 8-9 months, when I say Con Inc., I'm talking about Conservatism Inc., right? These are posers, these are phonies, these are fakers. These are people who make a professional living, usually in DC, total swamp creatures, pretending to be conservatives, pretending to be America first, and then spending most of their time trying to marginalize, ostracize, and deplatform anyone who actually is a true conservative or truly for America first. And so these Con Inc. types, they melt like a push, those, I remember in July, right? In a muggy South Jersey summer in mid-July, you'd get one of these orange sherbet push-up things, right? And you'd only have it for 10 or 20 seconds and it would start melting. Okay, that is a Con Inc. person melting, right? Like one of those push-up popsicle things in the like 100-degree muggy hot South Jersey summer. Anytime someone accuses them of all the things that this ADL tweet packs into one tweet, right? Because there's nothing more horrible, nothing more evil and terrible than being called all of these names. And these conning types spend all day long plotting on how not to be called any of these names, rather than, actually working to save our country, actually working to protect their homes and families and communities and improve the quality of life for their children. No. Job number one is not to be attacked by the AD freaking L. And they're all damned lies. They're so spineless, and it's so, I said this because cringe is a favorite word of the young America First Zoomers. By the way, just as a historical note, if you search like all the old websites that I used to run or whatever, we actually had the precursor to cringe. We said cringe-worthy, right? It was like a hashtag, right? Cringe-worthy, right? And that's Con Inc. Total cringe-worthy. And it's their inability to be self-aware about how weak and pathetic they look every time they run to disavow anyone who might possibly be the target of the Anti-Defamation League and the Southern Poverty Law Center. Notice, by the way, that the ADL did not have, speaking of, lack of any kind of spine, that the ADL did not tag me in their tweet. Of course, I tag them every single time I respond to them, but yeah, they don't do that. You know who else will not tag? Con inkers, who will either indirectly or directly conspire with the likes of the ADL, the SPLC, Right Wing Watch, all of those people, right? So I tagged them back, even though they didn't tag me. And here's the thing. I am actually going to walk through with you their little smear piece. Now, I don't know. I mean, yes, I do know. They really were antagonized by my mention of them and my calling them out in my column this week. But I think they're upset for a number of longer term reasons as well. And I think you'll see that as we go through this piece. They're upset that all of their efforts so far have failed to cancel me. And so this is their renewed attempt to do so. And it comes on the heels of a number of other attempts as well, which I believe are, clearly coordinated by a bunch of Lincoln Project wannabe juniors, right? These toddlers who want to get contracts with the Lincoln Project funders, publishing pieces in the Denver Post. And I saw one in a Penn State University newspaper. It was like a poorly written, 50-word letter urging conservatives to disavow me, and invoking all of the magical words. And I'm stalling here for time because I'm trying to pull up the screen of this piece. Okay, here we go. Let me see. I will blow it up for you and let's go through this. If anyone uses StreamYard, let me know. Like, I want to be able to zoom. How do I zoom this? I want to zoom yeah, I don't think I can. Anyway, I love StreamYard, by the way. And I'm just like kind of going on a side course here, but this has been great. I hope you've enjoyed me being able to use this. Once I was able to figure out how to do the share screen thing, to me, it reminds me of what we used to do in the old blogosphere, right? There used to be this thing, and if I got any old school blogger, conservative blogger types following me, you know what I'm talking about, okay? We called it fisking, where you would take like a newspaper article and then just dissect it line by line. And I'm so old that I can't even remember why it was called fisking. I'm going to see if I think it was Robert Fisk. Yes. See, you get a internet history lesson. So fisking is defined as, it was named after a journalist, Robert Fisk, originated in the blogosphere, and it's a rebuttal to an article or blog made by quoting its content section by section and refuting each section individually. Now, the thing is, I can't remember why it was called. Oh, yeah, I do. Robert Fisk was a Middle Eastern reporter. A lot of people took issue with the veracity of his reporting. And so to Fisk an article was to dissect an article by Robert Fisk, and it eventually became a generic term for dissecting any piece of crap. So that is what we are going to do with this article from the Anti-Defamation League, accusing me of attempting to, quote, normalize white supremacy. So it says that I have a long history of divisive rhetoric around a range of issues, particularly immigration. Why, thank you. Yes, I do have a long and storied history of reporting on immigration issues, and why, yes, it is considered divisive rhetoric by open borders liars who don't want Americans to question their larger schemes and conspiracies in importing massive numbers of people from the third world and other hellholes to transform the historic American nation into something quite different than what it always has been, and certainly what my parents moved here to provide for us. In the past year, the ADL says she has publicly and explicitly allied herself with white supremacist podcasts and other online programs. Okay, we'll get to those. Says that my bold support of and interaction with white supremacists points to the increasingly fine line between people who call themselves American nationalists and recognizable white supremacy. All you need to know here, of course, is the duplicity and the trickery here of conflating everyone who believes in American nationalism with imaginary white supremacists. There's another sort of subtext here of suggesting somehow that I'm duping people. And this was a technique that this Denver Post opinion writer for some GOP consultancy, like I said, a Lincoln Project wannabe, a couple of weeks ago after the Back the Blue rally also used, which is to somehow imply that I'm hiding what I'm doing. Gee, that seems to me to be classic psychological projection. And so when you read an article like this, pretty much every tool that they use to try and smear me, every false claim they make, they are guilty of themselves. That is the gaslighting that goes on with all of this. And so I'm shining my light so that you can see their gaslighting. Okay, let's see. So now where are we? History of divisiveness. So I take this as a compliment. This is an entire section on my long record of journalism, all the books that I've written. And here the technique is by simply stating the titles of my book, that's their argument, right? QED. Oh my God. She wrote a book called Invasion, How America Still Welcomes Terrorist Criminals and Other Foreign Messes to Our Shores. Oh my God. She wrote a book called In Defense of Internment, The Case for Racial Profiling in World War II and the War on Terror. Ergo, she is a divisive rhetorician who stirs up hate. And that's how she started. Then they get to Open Borders, Inc. And by the way, of course, the ADL, from the very first day of the launch of Open Borders, Inc., was already all in on the anti-Semitic smear because of the chapter that I wrote about George Soros and a number of nonprofit religious organizations, which, yes, included Jewish ones, that have perpetrated the refugee resettlement racket, remaking the interior of our country, flyover country. So let's see. Well, they acknowledge that I don't simply blame the left for this. They say she blamed some mainstream conservatives for embracing the status quo on immigration and criticized other groups spanning the political spectrum for facilitating increasing immigration to the United States. Yes, I did. And there you go. It's a freaking sin to consider every factor, consider every entity, whether they have a D by the name, an R by the name, wherever they fall on the political spectrum. And my sin, according to the ADL and others of their ilk, is that I'm actually an honest journalist who tells it straight and who doesn't choose sides like it's high school sports, because a wide range, a gamut of malefactors have collaborated and conspired with each other to try and bring our country down. Bad me. Bad me. So here we go. The litany of sins they now recount. I launched my book in New York, and I invited Gavin McInnes, a friend of mine, the founder of the Proud Boys, to do like an Ask Me Anything, like freewheeling sort of book launch, online book launch, book signing event, which you can watch, by the way. Let's see if I can bring that up. It was on YouTube with premier speakers. And one of the points of doing this was that I had spent a lot of time in Open Borders, Inc. talking about how many different types of patriots and patriot groups have been deplatformed by Open Borders, Inc. entities. And so I really wanted to sort of shove it in the face of those groups by picking Gavin McInnes to launch my book with. Let's see.
Hi, I'm Michelle Malkin. I am the author of the...
See, I'm going to bring this up just so you see a little bit of what made them so pissed off. This was fun. You can actually still, I'm amazed that it is, I'm amazed that that sit down with Gavin is still online, because as many of you know who are Gavin fans, he's been kicked off everywhere. He's got a lawsuit that's still ongoing. And, I've had at least one post on Facebook censored. I was complaining about censorship, and I merely posted a picture with Gavin, and that was enough to set off all of the radars and censors. Yeah, so here, this was fun.
The new book, Open Borders, Inc., Who's Funding America's Destruction, which comes out officially on Tuesday. And this is my live signing. If you go to premiercollectibles.com/Michelle Malkin, really the roots.
Anyway, so we had a lot of fun, and we just, vibed, as the kids say. And so that works its way into the, insidious dossier on my attempts to normalize white supremacy. All right, let's continue. Okay, so that's sin number one. And then they mention a column that I'm very proud of that was published last October. They characterize it as dismissing the violent and deadly actions by white supremacists at the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. And what they failed to mention is that I reported in that column on an independent review of police actions. I'm going to read that to you. It's so important. You can find the review by going to my column at creators or at uns.com. An independent review of the clashes at Charlottesville by Timothy Heafy of the Virginia law firm Hunton and Williams, commissioned by the Charlottesville city government. Okay, so this wasn't like some conservative media outlet, Fox News publishing this. It was commissioned by the Charlottesville city government, found that the Charlottesville police and Virginia State Patrol, quote, failed to intervene. Is this coming up? Oh no, that's the wrong one. So let me just finish reading this too. Failed to intervene, did not respond to requests for assistance, were, quote, insufficiently equipped to respond to mass unrest, failed to protect the points of egress, instead pushing the conflicting groups directly into each other, and, quote, failed to stand up to protect human life. Like, hardly anybody knows about this report, right? Police supervisors told Heafy, the independent reviewer, that they were ordered out of their protection zones. One of the Charlottesville Police Department lieutenants reported, we were sitting there with our thumbs up our asses. Another described how we were prevented from doing police work, and a third officer stated plainly that, quote, we failed this community. Sound familiar? Stand down orders, creating a situation in which violence was essentially manufactured because the police were ordered not to do their jobs. That was the relevant portion of my column that was mentioned by the ADL. And then, of course, mischaracterized and used to smear me as a normalizer of, quote, white supremacy. So this thing just goes on and on and on. Another of my sins, so we've got the sin of inviting Gavin to join me for the launch of my book, writing a column in which I quoted straight from the independent police action review of the events at Charlottesville. And then, let's see, in March 2020, Malkin's column about a speech she gave at a Groyper conference that month reflected her, quote, bigoted views. She wrote, America will look like the cover of Ilhan Omar's new book. Oh, yeah. What was the cover of her new book? And that's just a play on Omar's book, which was called This Is What America Looks Like, right? And it's a picture of her in her headgear. Well, let me just bring that up. So this is apparently amounts to bigotry, right? Say, this is what America will looks like. It's a play on her book title. And it's a picture of her. Okay. Now, she is an ingrate, a refugee ingrate of the highest order. And I don't want America to look like that. Do you? I don't want America to look like that. It was not ever meant or intended to look like that. The founding fathers didn't want it to look like that. And that makes me an incorrigible bigot attempting to normalize, quote, white supremacy. All right, let's see what else are my sins. Let's see, they quote, I'm great. It's great. Give me free publicity. Maybe we'll somehow reach and convert some of these people, right? They quote me as if the quotes themselves are so damning, right? America will look like the cover of Ilhan Omar's new book. It'll look like the no-go zones of the Twin Cities. It'll look like the serial predator-infested public schools in Montgomery County, Maryland. So when I say it, I'm normalizing white supremacy. But when the Metro section of the Washington Post is forced to report on it, they're just practicing obligatory journalism. And so this is quoting the speech that I gave. It will not look like this room being the room at AFPAC. This is not conspiracy replacement theory. This is conspiracy truth. All true. How does the ADL, all damn lies, refute this? By this point, Malkin was echoing many of the views promoted by white supremacists joining the battle against what they call conservative Inc., otherwise known as the mainstream conservative movement. So then it goes back in history, relives the 2019 CPAC speech that I gave, which I'm always happy to relive. You can watch the whole thing on YouTube. It's still there. It hasn't been canceled yet. And it quoted this, ADL quotes me in that speech saying, it's the GOP sellouts in bed with open borders, like the ones who hijacked the Tea Party movement to shill for amnesty, who are the real grifters cashing in and practicing deceit at the expense of their base. Once again, true, irrefutable, and more true than ever, I would say. Who am I talking about? I name all the names, right? It's the Koch people who hijacked the Tea Party movement. It's the Koch people who work explicitly and directly with the Anti-Defamation League to push out immigration hawks, immigration restrictionists, and America First young nationalists. So then it goes on to say that I've expressed for years my concern about demographic changes in the U.S. Yes, I have. Thank you for vouching for me, Anti-Defamation League. Unlike so many of the Johnny-come-latelys and grifter converts to the cause of America First, you know who you are, Charlie Kirk, TPUSA, right? Unlike those belated embracers of opposing mass migration, I have expressed my concern for years. That is right. ADL goes on to point out that I argue that anti-establishment dissidents were being attacked verbally and assaulted at the campus events last fall that constituted the famed Groyper Wars. I mean, okay, this is boring. I mean, we've talked about this so many times now. YAF, the disavowing, and then of course they zero in on Nick Fuentes, America First, throw in a bunch more white supremacist accusations, blah, 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 blah. Then they quote from my UCLA speech, and they go after me for refusing to disavow people, and pointing out that I'm not going to endorse every last thing every last person has ever said, tweeted, written in a super chat, blah, 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 blah. They quote one of my sort of rousing calls at AFPAC, the charge of the Light Brigade against the Keepers of the Gate. And yes, I had pointed out the many different disparate dissidents. They don't all agree with each other. I know a lot of them hate each other. Proud Boys, Groypers, nationalists, demographic truth tellers. I mean, they span the generational spectrum. A lot of them don't understand each other, whatnot. But to ADL, we're all the same. We're all the biggest menaces on the planet. And then they get into AFPAC, which again, loved it. One of the funnest things I've ever done. Tweeted about it. Linked all of the videos to all of my co-speakers at AFPAC, Nick Fuentes, Scott Greer, Patrick Casey, have the transcript to my speech, link the transcript of the other speakers' speeches as well. And then here it is again. What they really don't like is that I'm actually engaging in the practice of mentorship and defending many of these young people who've had their lives and reputations destroyed, or have had many of my same common enemies attempt to destroy them. It's just an ongoing, just eternal battle with these types of people. And then they zero in again on my AFPAC remarks, which were resounding defenses of the free speech of people that I may not necessarily agree with on topics that you're not supposed to talk about. So they don't like it that I opened my speech by saying mommy's in the house. They don't like that. That's one of the best lines I've ever written. Thank you. And here they are doing all of their crack investigative legwork, just reprinting other people's tweets of pictures that we all posted. Then the other thing that these people do full time is, and they consider it journalism, is to sit around. I don't know what thing they eat. By the way, I'm sorry, I haven't had lunch yet, so I'm going to have a little bit of my sandwich, right? But these people sit around in cubicles, whether it's, the Right Wing Watch, People for the American Way, ADL, SPLC, all these people. And whatever unhealthy food they're eating. And just sit and wait for us to post on Telegram or Twitter or whatever, and then go tattletale about it and turn it into an ADL article. God, they've got the easiest, cushiest jobs in the freaking world, and they still are the most oppressed people on the planet. Seriously? You sit there, wait for other people to tweet their original thoughts or telegram them, share their observations and insights about the world, and then run to your computers and post it on ADL and smack a white supremacy label on all of it. You are so blessed. You should count yourselves lucky every single day. Wow, what a great job you have, right? Nobody ever comes after you. Nobody doxes you. Nobody ever tries to prevent you from making a living. But They're so freaking oppressed. And here I made a joke, right? It's a joke about them all calling me a Nazi. I said, love Nazi mom. Oh, she called herself Nazi mom. She's a Nazi. She's a Nazi. By the way, This is a great advertisement. I'm sorry I'm eating with my mouth full. I'm hungry. Hope I'm not grossing you out. But this is a vibing thing, right? That's what the guys do, all the boys do. Anyway, this is a great advertisement for my Telegram. I really like Telegram. I prefer it to Parler. I think Parler is just another, I mean, there's great people on there. And I know a lot of people have worked really hard to build it up and all that, but I like Telegram. I like the people who are on there. I always learn something new. There's always interesting things I haven't seen anywhere else. So naturally, it's going to be throttled and censored and kick us all off of there. But for now, it reminds me of early Twitter, early Twitter, when it truly was a neutral platform and interesting people would talk to each other about interesting things. So, yeah, they tattle on my Telegram. Oh, and here, I love this too, right? So I'm Nazi, like they didn't think it was funny. I thought it was funny. And here they are, I'm anti-Semitic, I'm a white supremacist, blah, 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 blah. And then they go after Laura Loomer, right? They go after Laura Loomer for defending me. There's no winning with these people, right? I mean, she's an outright Zionist, but then instead they call her a right-wing, anti-Muslim bigot running for Congress in Florida. They ding me for supporting her campaign, which I've done from day one. And then they just do this whole thing where they toss all of it into a pot. White supremacist Peter Brimelow. He defines himself as a civic nationalist. He runs a wide variety of people on VDare, including me. They've run my columns there for, I think, almost 20 years now. Right, they talk about Gavin, Lara, Faith Goldie, who's been brutally, unjustly smeared, deplatformed from YouTube for publishing a factual piece on demographic conquest across the globe. And they don't like that I talked to Faith. They basically don't like it if you talk to anyone that they deem so radioactive that if you talk to them, then you also are radioactive. They talk about a reading list that I contributed to, that Milo Yiannopoulos put into place. They don't like if you read books that are against your worldview or that broaden your understanding or knowledge of things that have been written across time. And then they don't like it that American Renaissance picked up my syndicated column. They also don't like it that I moved my blog to Un's Review, the unmentionable Un's Review, run by Ron Unz, who, by the way, is Jewish, who they accuse of running a, quote, number of anti-Semitic tracts. Now, hopefully this will have the salutary effect of people with half a brain saying, I wonder what they're really talking about there, because I think I need to know more about that, right? So they say a site run by Ron Unz, but if you click on the link, and it doesn't go to Unz's site, right? It's their skewed and biased and misleading and false and fraudulent interpretation and summation of his views, rather than just linking to the forbidden Unz.com. Unz, by the way, is banned from Facebook. This happened about a month ago. And so people who try to share my columns, which are now housed primarily with all the extra hyperlinks and added features that I put on my column, are now housed there. And so you can't share my columns if you share them from Unz on Facebook. It's just like a blanket ban. It doesn't matter whether or not I'm, actually violating any of their standards or whatever. And that's because there are no standards. The standards are whatever they say they are. And whenever they want to change them, they will change them. So, this is greatest hits They don't like it that I talked to Vincent James and have appeared multiple times on his awesome YouTube channel. They don't like it that I did an interview with Red Ice. They don't like it that I have had Faith and Cassandra Fairbanks and Ashley Ray Goldenberg. And look how lazy they are. They can't even fix their typos. They call her Ashley. She made a funny joke about that on Telegram. These people are so lazy. And they also don't like that I talked to Patrick Casey. And notice, by the way, is this scrolling? Yeah. Notice that, again, they don't actually link to the podcast. It was really cool. We talked for almost an hour. I talked for almost an hour with Patrick Casey. And he's got a really interesting show that he does. Is it on YouTube? Yeah, I think it's on YouTube. Let's see. Did they mention Scott Greer? Because I did his show too. Yeah, here's the screenshot of the foursome I did with The View. That was a lot of fun. I don't know if any of you watched that, but I had so much fun doing that show with the four gals. But, there it is. This is normalizing white supremacy right here, right? Talking to a bunch of gals about what it's like to be deplatformed. I've clearly crossed a boundary in terms of my association with white supremacists. Blah. Just remember by arguing my enemies, attacking dissident voices, including her own. Boring. Then they just fizzled out. Like they couldn't even come up with some like big punchy ending for their smear piece. Okay, so that's that. Now you know. The thing is now, the way that the Google algorithms work and all these things work is you probably Google my name and that'll be like the first or second or third thing that comes up. And, gullible, sheepish people will just look at the headline. Michelle Malkin normalizes white supremacy. Bleh! But I think it's losing its sting. I really do now, because it's been however many months, almost a year now, since these people first mounted their biggest major attempt to disavow. And, if I've accomplished one thing, I think it's in, convincing people to actually listen to these dissident voices, right? You can't come away from a half hour or 45-minute or hour long or longer interview or exchange between many of these, young, talented people, content creators, and continue to maintain this simplistic cardboard caricature profile of what the ADL wants to paint us all as. And I'm the same way, right? I mean, there's hours and hours and hours and hours of footage of me talking. I have 7 books. There's thousands of columns that I've written. And anyone with any sense of like some modicum of intellectual curiosity cannot hold these two images, the image that the ADL and the SPLC and the Daily Wire and the Ben Shapiro and TPUSA militants have painted of me or any of my colleagues and allies and friends, that versus the body of our work. That's why they don't link to UNS. That's why they don't link to the interviews that I've done. And there's enough dumb people, I guess, on social media, just dumb, sheepish people or evil people who want to get jobs with some of these conning institutions that will just eat it all up and spread the lies and spread, deceptively edited clips, things taken out of context, deliberately misinterpreted sound bites and all this. But what can you do? Dumb people are just going to be dumb. Stupid sheep are going to be stupid sheep. Okay, what else do I have for you? I talked a little bit about the siege in Colorado Springs, and I will mention that tomorrow in my show. Did I even mention that, guys? That's the new news, right? I mentioned it on Facebook. I have a show that is debuting on Newsmax tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. Eastern, Sovereign Nation. And my first guest, I'm so excited, is Darren Beattie, the former White House speechwriter, political theorist, former political science professor at Duke University. I believe he has the distinction of having been the first academic to endorse President Trump as well as predict his victory. If you're not following him on Twitter, you absolutely have to. He's a must read at Darren J. Beattie. And we talk about a concept that he explored with Chris Buskirk in a podcast, which is another great podcast for American greatness, the concept of moral imperialism. Some of you might have seen the tweet that I did on Conservative Inc. complaints about the New York Attorney General's campaign against the NRA. And I'm going to read that tweet and then I'm going to sign off because I have pickleball drilling to do. But this tweet, for some reason, it took off. And as throttled as my account is, every once in a while, something will break through the barriers. And I said, instead of crying about how unfair and mean and ruthless it is for the New York Attorney General to use her power to dissolve the mostly useless and AWOL National Rifle Association, ask yourselves why Republicans never use their power to crush and dissolve institutions and enemies that they talk about fighting and defeating, and then always leave alone or bow and scrape to and apologize for, right? Apologize to. So we talk about some of that, and even for a short 6 or 7 minute segment, I think you will enjoy it. And it was just a great honor to have Darren join me for the inaugural edition of Sovereign Nation, debuting tomorrow. I sound like some, standard cable TV news promo-y type person, but I'm excited about it. It's a really cool opportunity to have, and I hope you will tune in and spread the word and help it become a successful thing. Hang out with me on Saturday night at 7 p.m. on Newsmax. So yeah, I'm going to take off. I hope you all have a great weekend, and I'll catch you again soon. Bye.